But I really wanted to bring on people with a variety of different expertise and background to join us. And next up, we have Linda Brubaker. And Linda, I'm trying to remember how we first crossed paths. I know you're a part of my Friday VIP job seeker community, but prior to that, do you remember how we first started interacting?
I think you may have commented on one of the posts that I had out there.
Might have been. I think that sounds about, because I don't know if it was, I usually can like remember, like with Renee, I remember in the introduction from Annette, but I think you and I just something, there was a vibe, you know, it was right away. I was like, oh, Linda's a cool person. I want to hang out with her. And we started connecting, and she comes out to our Friday calls right now and offers advice to job seekers. And I said, hey, do you want to come on this LinkedIn Live-a-thon and bring in a topic? And Linda said, sure. And you guys are going to love this. I should say people, because there's not just guys, there's men and women. You people are going to love this topic, because Linda's going to be talking about dealing with the terrible twos of job search, not TWO, but TOO. Too old, too experienced, and too expensive. Now, before we jump in on that, Linda, can you tell us a little bit about what do you do and who do you work with?
Okay, so I'm the experience rich person that you all are talking about. I mean, Ken talked about trying to make career change. This is probably my third position or fourth role since I've turned experience rich. So I'm an ex headhunter, an ex internal recruiter. I've been a hiring manager. Um, and now I'm doing this job search coaching. And what my skill set is bringing people the experience from all sides of the desk, that different kind of a perspective. Because what I do is I work with you one-on-one to help discover and showcase those transferable skills to find that next forever job.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Linda. And are you sharing a slide deck? Am I remembering correctly? Is there something you want to? Let's get you sharing that up on screen, and I'll make sure we're all set here before I pull myself off of the screen. So go ahead and click on share to bring that up. And while you're doing so, I'm just going to remind folks, if you're joining us late, we are doing a LinkedIn Live-a-thon from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. today. If you joined late and you want to get the resources from previous presenters, just go to mellermarketing.com/Lil Rich, LIL Rich. The link LIL stands for LinkedIn Live, and then the word rich, all one word, all lowercase, making it super easy for you. All right, I think I see this up on screen. Are you able to navigate from here, Linda? And I'm going to take myself off.
Perfect.
All right, perfect. I'll be back in about 20 minutes then.
Sounds great. So one of the things that I've discovered is that I love being at this part of the program because I can build on things that everybody else has said. If you're here because you're experience rich, you truly are not alone. And I have to tell you that being experience rich in job search truly is not fatal. It's something that you can easily work around. Now, am I going to tell you that being older may not affect your job search? I can't tell you that. Can I tell you that ageism in job search doesn't exist? I can't tell you that either. But what I can tell you is that there are ways you can deal with some of those concerns that people have about us being of a certain age. And you can do that and showcase your skills, your transferable skills, and really land those positions. A number of the people that I've worked with have done that. So what are the terrible twos of job search? I'm sure we all have them, right? You've probably heard them before. In fact, if you could, in the chat, tell me how many of you have either thought about these terms, being too old, too experienced, or you're concerned that people think that you're too expensive. If you have, you'll notice by looking at the chat, you're truly not alone. Lots of people are feeling exactly the same thing. And those twos sometimes hold us back. It's not that the recruiter is really concerned about that, or the hiring manager. Sometimes they are, but it's also us who's concerned that that's the reason. And so we hesitate a little bit. What I want you to do is remember that you have some great experience. That's what being experience rich is all about. And the idea is it's up to you to channel that experience, talk about that experience in ways that make sense for the next job you're looking at. There are other twos that are out there. So when people say that you're too old, too experienced, too expensive, that's really code for saying, you're too set in your ways. You don't know how to use technology. You've always done things exactly the same way, so you can't or won't learn anything new. Or you'll get bored. The job doesn't include everything you've ever done before. So it's not going to make you stay. You won't be around for a while. Or just as Renee was talking about in other ways, or Joey, or other speakers, Sue, the idea is you have to be able to fit into that culture, that environment. And so sometimes they're concerned that if we're of a certain age, if we're experience rich, we won't fit in with their employees and their environment. And then there's that terrible concern that some hiring managers have if they're hiring somebody who's younger than they are, more experienced than they are, who comes from a different kind of a background than they have. Some hiring managers, let's face it, are concerned that those of us who are experience rich may come in and tell them what to do. And they don't want that kind of an idea. They want somebody who wants to do the job that they have to do and be able to support them. So here's the bottom line. Those of us who are experience rich want to talk about everything we've done, and you should rightfully be proud of everything you've done. The issue is that new employers don't care about that. They honestly don't care about everything you've ever done. They care only about what it is you can do for them. And if you want to deal with the too old, too experienced, too expensive aspects of job search, you need to be able to pull it back just a little bit. And that's not exactly the way I wanted to phrase it, but the idea is you need to be able to showcase what it is you can do for them. That's what their bottom line is. So we're not going to go through some of the ideas about job search. You already know how not to age yourself on a resume. You know not to change your email address to something that is more Gmail based. You know not to include a resume, an objective. You know not to say references will be provided when required. But remember that just as Renee was talking about in terms of your appearance, if you have 7 seconds to grab their attention, you have 7 seconds to grab their attention in your resume. And what you need to do then is be able to focus right up top on what you can do for them. Your keywords, your skills, your experience should all be related to the new job. In fact, I highly recommend that one of the things you do is pull some of those words from that posting to show that you really understand what the job is all about and that you've got that visual match between what it is they're looking for and what you can do. And that you're limiting those core skills, not to everything you've ever done, but to what this specific job is looking for. And by the same token, when we were talking about highlighting those accomplishments, and Sue, I love the way you talked about turning doing into done, into action. That's what you want to do here as well. And you want to make sure that those accomplishments that you're talking about really relate to the new job. And you also know that you want to limit the experience on your resume. And I know that for some of us that hurts. But the idea is if it's older than 10 to 15 years, it's not as relevant in the minds of other people necessarily, but more importantly, on your written materials, it ages you. Now, is there a way to highlight some of that older experience as well without aging you? Absolutely. Add another section on your resume called additional related experience. You don't have to include everything. Don't include dates. Don't include bullets. Just include the name of the company, your job title, and that allows you to go back and refer to it in either an accomplishment, in a skill, or in your interview answers without aging you as part of that process. Now, in terms of interview tips, you've all heard these before, but I want to change your mindset a little bit. We've heard about a STAR story, right? Situation, task, action, result. As you get to become experience rich, you need to add another T at the end because it's important to make sure that everything you're talking about is transferable to the job you're looking for. It's up to you to provide that tie-in. So when you're putting together the accomplishments on your resume, when you're putting together the bullet points, when you're putting together your interview stories, make sure that all of those stories are relevant to the job you're looking for and that what you're talking about is relatable to them. Now, I had one job seeker who was so excited about some of the experience that she had that she wanted to use an example because it was the best example that she had. And she talked about, as a salesperson, being able to pull all of the contacts from her Rolodex. And the people on the other side of the table looked at her and said, "No, what's Rolodex?" It aged her immediately without being able to let her make the point, which was that she has a lot of contacts that she can reach out to. So that goes back to the idea of not being tech savvy. We need to be able to make sure that regardless of where we are in the process, resume, LinkedIn, interview, that everything you do is relevant to the job you're looking at, and as often as we can, using their language too. So one of the concerns that a lot of people have, and I'm going to go through these very quickly, is just the idea that how do you present yourself? Remember, Joey talked about never saying no or but. I agree with him. You want to frame your experience in that yes and. Yes and is incredibly powerful. So if they're asking, well, you might not fit in here, or that's what their thought is. So give them an example of how you had to learn something new as one of your accomplishments. Give them an example of how you implemented change. Again, they're thinking that you aren't adaptable to change. Show them that you are. Yes, and also says you're bringing your A game, your experience, the best of what you know. And even though it isn't in their industry or in that particular job, the yes and says, I bring the best of what I have, and then I pick up from you those things that are important for this individual job or this industry. So we blend the best of both worlds. You're bringing your experience, you're bringing your energy, your enthusiasm, your knowledge, your ability to adapt that you've learned by being experience rich into every situation that you're talking about. Those will help you stand out in the process. Now, in one of the next presentations, you're going to hear about the idea of how do you continue to get that training, and being open to new training, adding new skills to your portfolio is another way that you demonstrate that being experience rich is something that will help you in the new job, because you are open to new ideas, to constantly picking up something new and then building on those in terms of what you can bring for the job. Too old. So let's talk about those individually. A lot of us feel as though job market is really aimed at those who are a lot younger than we are. And sometimes it may seem that way, especially when you see a posting that says no experience necessary. We know that we have lots of great experience to provide. And so one of the things that really helps us to get our foot in the door and to get that offer is to demonstrate not only that you can learn, that you can adapt, but by focusing in on you, what you have for this particular job and what this job needs and what you can bring. And I will tell you that that kind of thing really does work. It goes to that whole idea of being too experienced. Remember that I said earlier that some people may concern that being too experienced, to experience rich perhaps, may threaten the hiring manager or other members of the hiring team, or that they're going to be concerned that you're going to get bored and leave. The idea is, if you focus in on what this job needs and what you bring, and more importantly, how this job fits exactly what you want to do right now, then that's what's important, and that's what's going to keep you moving forward in the process. Too expensive? We all know that. Experience helps to bring that salary level up. So it's important for you, before you go into these, to know what your worth is and to know what the potential salary range for the job is. Asking about salary expectations in a job search, from the company's perspective, it's a trick question. They ask that question so that they can screen you out. Your best bet is to know what your worth is and to know what that job is all about. If you can't find that information, there are some websites out there that will help you. And here's a trick. As more and more states are beginning to implement the fact that companies have to list the salary ranges on their postings, yay, Illinois, you've got that legislation in process. It's going to be easier for us to know what that job is worth, so you can make your decisions and position yourself appropriately. If your state isn't there yet, take a look at for Illinois, for example, take a look at Colorado. Cost of living is very similar, and it gives you an idea at least of what the ranges are, because Colorado does require people to post those ranges. Now, that whole idea about asking for salary is important from several perspectives. Number one, you want to make sure that you aren't pricing yourself out of the market, but you also don't want to price yourself under the market either. The important thing, the overall thing that you need to remember is that as an experience-rich job seeker, you need to demonstrate that you want this job, not just any job, but this job. And all of your materials, all of your comments, everything you do has to be focused on this job and what you bring to this job. Remember, it's not about everything you've ever done. It's what you can do for them. And the more you can demonstrate that, the more you can counteract the terrible twos, the too old, the too experienced, the too expensive.
Oh my gosh. Such a great topic. Didn't you all love the topic too, the terrible twos? It reminds me of, and I'm a parent, my kids are getting a little older now, Linda. So my first reaction was the terrible twos of toddlerhood, which if you're a parent, you can, just ride the wave, my friend. It's and it's fun. And you look back and you realize the little kid problems become bigger kid problems as they get older. But it was a nice look back at that, and thinking of where we are all right now, if you're struggling with these things. And I love how you made it kind of a playful topic, but it's also a very approachable way of a lot of the frustrations that folks are having on here. So what I want to do now is, if it's okay with you, we'll do some questions. Linda, would that be all right with you? All right. So I'm going to just remind everyone, if you have a question for Linda, feel free to use the chat feature inside of LinkedIn. So what I'm doing is I'm going inside LinkedIn, and StreamYard brings your comments to us. It takes about 30 seconds from the time I say, hey, drop your questions inside chat for you to hear me saying. So there's a little bit of a delay. It's almost like when you're watching like the Grammy or the Emmys, and they have the time delay because sometimes the celebrities swear. So StreamYard does the same thing. They give us a little bit of a delay from the time we go live, not because they're afraid of profanity. It's just the process of changing the baton from one platform to another. It does take a little bit of time on that. So if you do have a question or a comment on anything that Linda shared, if you love the topic, please feel free to bring it up. So I see one question I want to bring in right on off the bat here. Thoughts on embracing your gray hair? Any thoughts on that, Linda? I know this is getting into image, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think it really is up to you. I think that gray hair looks wonderful on a lot of people. I will tell you that I am gray, but I color my hair not because I'm worried about how old I look, but because my hair is so white that it blends in with the color of my skin. I also made a promise to my daughter many years ago that I wasn't going to stop coloring my hair until she got married, and she's not there yet.
Fair enough. That's good. And I see a lot more women nowadays embracing gray, which is awesome. And men do it, and they get this, oh, you look distinguished with your salt and pepper hair. And, wrinkles are a gift that we are given, my friend. It means that you are still here and you are still around. And if you have laugh lines, it means that you've laughed a lot. And if you have gray hair, it means you're still on this earth and you're still aging. And that's a good thing. It beats the alternative is what I always say. But I think a lot of times it's, as you were talking about, it's making sure that you're doing things in the best light possible. And, right.
And it's the best light possible for you. If you're comfortable, and so many people are comfortable, I wish I was, are comfortable embracing their gray hair, it looks beautiful. Okay. I started going gray in my early 30s. Okay. So I've been doing this for a long time. It's hard for me to give it up. But the idea that you're comfortable with it, I think it's fantastic. We've earned those grays. We've earned our experience. Showcase it because you're beautiful no matter what you are.
Yeah. And I see a couple more comments coming in. I'm going to start to move us over to Melissa saying, I've heard too experienced and too expensive over and over. And Linda, I kind of feel like sometimes this might be verbalized. You have too much experience. And sometimes I think it might not be verbalized. You're being screened out before even being the chance to apply for or consider a job. And I know that you said you used to work in recruiting. So what are your thoughts on, in a cover letter, should we say, I know you're only looking for 3 to 5. should we say, and I know I have 30, or what are your thoughts there? Should we
No.
address it or not?
So I'm an avoider in this sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that if you're making your materials, your resume, your cover letter, focus in on what they're looking for, and you're only including 10 to 15 years of experience on your resume and your LinkedIn profile, I don't care how much experience you actually have. I care what you can do for me. And you're showcasing what's important for me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you ought to ever say that you have 20 or 30 years of experience, especially if the job says they're only looking for 5.
Right.
What you want to do is you want to highlight why this is the role you want right now. And sometimes that means that you're taking a career pivot. And absolutely, you can say that in your cover letter. You can say, talk about your journey to get from here to there. And many of us don't have a straight line. I think Sue was talking about that. Many career paths go to the side rather than up. And for this particular point in your career, I think it works. We're
Mm-hmm.
still at the stage too where we can go back onto that COVID response.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things COVID taught us was what's really important in a job moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly where I want to be right now. And that helps you reframe the situation.
That's a good point. All right, I'm going to keep us into a couple more. There's so much happening in here. Actually, let me do one quick thing. Let's see. Yep, we do have Diana. Diana's kind of waiting in the wings for us. I'm going to bring you on screen real quick, Diana, just to say hi. Make sure we can do a quick audio check.
Right.
Hey, Diana, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Sorry, we're doing the Wilson from Home Improvement where the comments kind of hiding a little bit of your
Right,
face.
exactly.
But I'm going to move you back into the green room. We'll bring you back in just a few minutes, okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If you all remember that show, am I dating myself by saying that, Linda? Home Improvement, it's not on here anymore. But
It's on TV, or so you're watching.
it's still like on the reruns. I don't know if we call them that, replays, or the classic TVs or whatever. But the character would be talking over his fence to his neighbor Wilson, and we'd never see Wilson's face. You'd only see his eyes because that's the size of the fence. So a lot of times I joke in StreamYard when comments come up, especially if they're longer comments, we're not able to see over the top of them. Let me just go on to a couple of additional comments. I feel like I started these, but StreamYard's not. Oh, they're at the bottom of my list. Okay. So when you were doing recruiting, Linda, did you use LinkedIn Recruiter for screening candidates?
I did not. I've never used LinkedIn Recruiter through any of my search, but I do use a variety of other tools that are out there. LinkedIn Recruiter, I think, is a very good one. And it's one, if I'm going to be honest, that I need to learn more about.
Well, I want to ask a question, and maybe I'll ask if there's others in the audience that are aware, can confirm nor deny this. But here's a related question from Dion, and I apologize, we're gonna have to look over the top of the comment here. But Dion is saying most companies request you apply on their website, which includes having to add dates for your education. Now, obviously, they're putting in dates so they know that you completed your education. Like, when did you complete your education? They're looking for that verification so they know it was done. And then, to Dion's point on here, you can derive your age from your degree. And LinkedIn does the same thing, by the way. If you put your degree in your education section, which you should put your degree, I've heard that by putting the dates in, it actually helps LinkedIn to serve you ads based on jobs. But it also, similar to what Dion was just saying, people can understand what your age is. So they can kind of do the quick math, figure you were 22 when you graduated. Now, some people I've heard leaving their years of graduation off of their education section, and I've heard that can help because then they can't quite pinpoint it. But then I've also heard if you don't put the years in there, then you may not qualify if they say bachelor's degree required and recruiters are doing a search on LinkedIn Recruiter. So I'll leave that to our audience to respond. I think it was Kevin Turner who said you have to put the years in there, otherwise you don't come up in search. But I'll see if anyone from the audience is aware, and if so, please drop in the comments there. But I'm going to move us along here, Linda.
Okay,
so I want
what's that? And that is that if you don't have your dates in, I've not done LinkedIn Recruiter, but I have searched for people and looked for their degree. Yeah. And if I put in bachelor's degree comes up, for example, even if you don't have the dates.
You don't put dates. Okay, good. So I'm not completely 100% certain on either. So I usually give people like, here's some considerations, both sides. Susan has a point, and she's saying, thinking of eliminating my first 3 positions. And I think the important point for Susan and for the rest, and tell me what you think, Linda, is they are no longer relevant.
Exactly.
because I don't think we're trying to hide anything. We should be happy that we are experience rich. But I think if they're no longer relevant, that's probably a good thing to do. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. And if they are relevant, then I would add that second section on your resume under experience. It just says additional related positions. So that, Jenny, if one of those earlier positions was related to the new job, but you feel it's too old, then just put the name of the company and the title, and it still allows you to refer back to it without aging you or the experience.
There you go. There's a little workaround. And I saw this point, and Angela had a couple really good comments, by the way. Angela, I'm reading your comments. I'm like lit up on them right now. But one was, been told that I was too old and that I looked expensive. And I want to come back to one of the points that you made, Linda, on you should know the market value for the job. Obviously, you're trying to get the highest salary you can when you come into a position. But I think the point that you were trying to make is you should know the market value. You should know what you're worth and what you think the position is paying. Did I capture that correctly?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So in this case, Angela, I don't know. I mean, if you have any advice for her, Linda, on if someone says you look like you're too expensive, you look like you have more experience than we need, you look like you're too expensive. How, if at all, do you address that?
So part of it is that if you're tailoring it to this job and your cover letter, your interviews, you should talk about why you want this role. At this point in your career, this is what you've done. Brenda, you talked earlier about the terrible twos with the toddlers, right? Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. In a sense, it's the same thing with the jobs. You wouldn't have applied for the job unless it was something you knew you wanted to do. And if you've done your research, you know what that range might be. So the idea is to come in and say, first of all, not talk about salary too early in the process, but to fit what you're looking at. If they say you look too expensive, you can always be flip and say, you're right, but I'm worth it. But more importantly, the idea is what I'm providing you is the experience you're looking for, and I can do X, Y, and Z. Always bring it back to Sue's idea. What can I do for you? And give them those ideas, and the expensive may go away.
Yeah, I love that. And there was somebody on our Friday job seeker call. I'm not sure if it was Joey or who it was that said it, but when we think about experience, being experience rich is not something that is a negative. It's a positive, because think about the plane that went down in the Hudson River. I'm sure every one of those passengers on flight was so happy that it was an experience rich pilot, that it wasn't somebody on their first or second flight, because they would not have had the experience in guiding experience to drive them through how to do a successful landing. So I think sometimes playing up, well, you might think that, but here's what you get with me as a candidate. I'm not going to be jumping around in 6 months. This is what I want to do. I'm very clear on the position. I know what the market value is. So I think you're playing that up, right, Linda?
Absolutely. And you're showing exactly how what you've done matches what it is they need.
That's awesome. So I'm going to wrap us up here, and we're going to get our next speaker, Diana, up on screen. But as we do that, I'm going to pull up your LinkedIn profile up on screen. And Linda, can you remind us, do you work with people one-on-one? And if so, could you remind us, what are the services and offerings that you have?
Absolutely. I do work with people one-on-one. So I'm offering today a free resume review. Be happy to give you some advice on that. And that's going to be in whatever material Brenda sends out later. I would love to connect with you. If you want to talk about how we can get together, I can do that as well. And if you're interested in the one-on-one coaching, then we can talk about that. And I'm offering a special on that as well.
Wonderful. And Linda, we can also connect with you on LinkedIn. Are you open to new connections there too?
Absolutely. Please do. And I'm another of those people that you're going to have to hit the more so that you can do the connect. And all you have to say is experience rich, and I'll know where we met.
Oh, I love it. That's even easier. You just say, hey, experience rich, and they'll know where you came from. So Linda, thank you so much for all of your expertise and your guidance, and just for the wonderful topic, for bringing in some levity on what can be a very serious topic sometimes. When I saw your topic, I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And I knew that it would be, and it really was. So thank you so much for joining us today, Linda.
Thank you all, everyone. I'll look at your comments in just a minute.